I don't know. There wasn't really a choice. It's not, some people think like, early in life, oh, this is what I want to do. In my case, it was just trying to figure out something that will keep me focused or that will keep me, wanting to keep doing that thing and trying different things. And so initially, I was always creative. I was a very creative person, but I wasn't necessarily an artist. One day I just wanted to start painting and try to become an artist. So actually that was the time when I came to New York in the mid-90s, and I was sort of like doing it on my own, and I found out, oh, this place in New York that was really cheap and where you could just go and paint, and I went there and painted like crazy and painted and keep painting. It never felt like a complete medium, and then I was dealing with a lot of issues in painting that relate to the history of painting itself, and so for me those things were problematic in the sense that I was always reaching a dead end with painting, and that wasn't completely interesting. Fully interesting to me. And I had a sensibility to sound, to time-based media in general, to film, and I wanted to incorporate the ideas that I was exploring and knowing through painting into sound and into video. And my painting was always very, related to materiality and abstraction. And somewhat, that made sense to me in terms of sound. How can I use sound, and how can I incorporate sound or sonic methods to making compositions. So in painting, you build layers upon layers, and especially, late 90s, early 2000s, where like technology was becoming very accessible to people, and the personal computer and all that, it became very easy just like digitally kind of like simulate the same process. No, that's a great question, because I often had conversations with my peers, and we all like talk about how we feel about our own work and what is it that we think that we do. So in that sense, I like to think of myself as an interdisciplinary artist that works with sound and visual arts, but also composes experimental music. In that sense, I am a composer and a sound artist that has a strong connection to visual arts, or like I see sound as a visual artist, or my sound art comes from a visual art experience. In that sense, that's why also I'm more interested in an art context rather than a music context. Although I have a history of playing music, one of the things that I wanted to do when I went into working with sound and, let's say, making compositions based on material and processes, was as dogma not to utilize musical instruments, because I was interested in not having any musical language in the work. I wanted to get rid of that completely. Let's say when I do a live performance, which is not going to be the case of this Thursday, because I'm going to be presenting a piece, but when I am in the space actually making things happen, I always bring the work to a very, very physical place where I induce states. Something that is very interesting to me is that although there is a lot of theory and information about what specific things do, I always feel that it becomes completely relative, and the experience is always subjective. I've been in situations where I mean, I remember they did a show many years ago where, you know, the place was so, the sound was so big, so loud, but loud, it was more like physical loud rather than, you know, amplitude loud. It was, the amplitude was very high, but, you know, the physicality was really, really intense to the point where like you couldn't hear your own thoughts anymore, and the sound was really hitting your organs, and there was a lot of like, you know, facing and beating happening, and then you know, after the show some people approached me, and you know, everybody there was exposed to the same thing, but you know, some people loved it, some people hated it, some people thought they wanted to puke, some people thought they were very happy with the sensations they experienced, and then it made me think, like, you know, there is no really, I mean, there is a lot of theory, but there is no really theory that explains why one person feels one way or another. I mean, that could be a total psychological thing, or it could be, I don't know, it could be something completely personal. I like to think, or I like to feel that in my work, everything emerges from making the work itself. You start from making a mark, or from thinking that something is interesting, something, you know, moves you or motivates you, and then, you know, you start putting things together, and then, you know, ideas might emerge from that, from the process. You know, I don't think of my work as, oh, you know, it's always going to be appropriated material, or it's always going to be something that I create from the, you know, from the starting point. That was something interesting to me, that I was looking at some films that were in a storage room, and I asked the technician there if I could get, you know, some of his films, and he said, yeah, just take whatever you want. And then, you know, without even knowing what was there, because we were all sealed like containers, I just grabbed a 16mm film, and when I went to the studio and I put it back to the projector, it was a film that is called Cromwell. And so I thought, you know, I don't want to use a film, you know. I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm gonna use I'm gonna appropriate a film and do something with it. So to me, it was just a film that I needed to erase so I could use the film again. So then I wouldn't have to buy film to do that. So I just, you know, put the whole thing in a bucket of bleach, and you know, and I wanted the whole thing to become, you know, clear. I didn't want any more content in there. But then, you know, when I noticed that it was so much film, the bucket wasn't that big enough. You know, it was taking too long, and I just took it out and tried to, you know, by hand, you know, get rid of as much information as I could. So when I play back, I thought, oh, well, you know, it's kind of interesting, you know, but you know, I gotta keep doing things to it so it disappears. So in terms of appropriation, that was kind of like, it was more, you know, a consequence of trying to do something else and then going with it to see where it would take me. You know, we live in a very Puritan country, and mainly, and so I was like, yeah, this is very funny. So I decided to use that title as a reference to the content, to the initial content of the film, but I was not interested in talking about anything in specific. That's a very, very important question, because, you know, to me the pieces are not finished just by, you know, looking at them, even though when they're completed technically, by looking at them in the computer or just projecting them in the studio. I think the whole environment come together is very important. I see them as a, you know, as a structural thing, something that is even like architectural, but also, you know, sculptural. You know, the whole room, the color, the sensation, the space, the shape of the space, the way in which you're supposed to experience what's going on. It's always like, you know, I always think about that stuff. The experiential aspect about the work is not just by being in a place, just looking at something. It's not just a frontal experience. It's like, you know, it's everything that is around you. And in that way, yeah, I mean, I like to control, to shape the experience as much as I can. In that particular situation, yes, the environment needs to be controlled for accuracy, because you need the work to do something very specific. If there are some distractions that take away from the work, then, you know, the experiences change. However, you know, I've done other pieces that are completely site-specific, and then, yeah, it is about taking, you know, taking the space to inform the work. I did an audiovisual site-specific work in the shell that used to be a shaft elevator, where all the visuals and the sounds were informed from the architecture of the space and what was left in the space. I recorded the vibrations of the floor, the walls. I photographed all the architecture, and I used that to create grids that then, you know, were constructed frame by frame to inform, you know, the time-based experience. So, you know, that's not always the case.